What is good, everyone? Welcome into episode 12 of season 6. That's right. We are now going over some very interesting topics because, well, some things have come up for what people have been searching about that I've been wanting to really cover for people. And so I find that these are I believe to be crucial more than most people would care for, but that's okay. People aren't caught up yet, and I want to make sure that this information gets out sooner than later. But for those of you that are new, don't forget to do your due diligence. Research, not just online, but different libraries, antique bookstores, even talk to different people in various fields that are experts. Talk to others who have had eyewitness accounts. Then you'll start to get more the picture of things that are and things that are not. That way you can begin to receive the information, process it for your benefit. That way you know which way is the best way to move for your situation. That being said, we are going to go ahead and get right into this. We're going to talk a lot about these different constellations and galaxies in today's episode. The only other one that we're not going to talk about that's a galaxy or constellation or really a planet are the Tartarians. The rest we're going to talk about, such as the Sagittarius Constellation, Marvel Galaxy, DC Galaxy, Bioshock Galaxy, Dishonored Galaxy, The Witcher Galaxy, Elder Scrolls Galaxy, Doom Galaxy, Tartarians, Dune Galaxy, and Rebel Moon Galaxy. Hence the reason why it's called From Sagittarius to Rebel Moon. Now, most of these are what people see as fiction, whether in movies, TV shows, video games, or what have you. But ultimately, a lot of these come from different parts of reality that, while not having the same names and attire, and maybe a couple of things here and there that are just tweaked a little bit in order for there not to be a relational basis, they put it in front of our face, you know? So, the first one, of course, Sagittarius Constellation. Well, in Black Book project term, this would be known as the Forge of False Fire. So it's known as a stolen dominion zone. It's an original part of an Elohim forged Stargate route. It was seized and used to forge false dominions, dark kingships, and war-bred hybrids during the pre-Adamic revolt. It now functions as a major staging ground for the Luciferian Syrian Draconian Alliance, especially concerning mind manipulation, false prophecy systems, and AI based identity interference on our planet, Hot Rats. Now, the primary alien races in the Sagittarius. Of course, we have it's a type of Draconis. This would be, I guess they call it Thubanic, but Thubanic Draconis, or otherwise known as the Red Serpents. We also have the Jur Lenith, which is Sirius C hybrids. I think it's pronounced. It's Hex. Yeah. Get some glasses. Or maybe it's just the lights being a little too shiny. I don't know. But it's Hex Dominion. Anyway, Chrono Flesh Walkers. We also have what's known as the Baal Courts, which are fallen thrones. Then you also have remnants of Eloa Ganari. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But the origin and role for each of these, we'll start with the Red Serpents. It's an ancient draconian lineage, obviously because it's Draconis. With the Cirrus C hybrids, these are corrupted seers and AI conduits. With the Chronoflesh Walkers, these are time warped entities. The Fallen Thrones, such as the Baal Courts, no, it's not a Baal or Baal or Baal or Baal, however you want to pronounce it, but it's Bael or Ba'. These are ancient rebellious Elohim. And of course, the other remnants of Eloah Ganari are pre-Adamic kingdoms seed line. Now, the Red Serpents lead bioengineering programs, major players in soul farming and false ascension tech through hybrid messiahs. The Sirius C hybrids are experts in crafting multi-layered simulations. Their tech is used to seed false religions and distorted star seed doctrines. So, any of you out there believing that star seeds are real and they exist is a complete and utter fallacy created by the enemy. And that's where it comes from. With the Chronoflesh Walkers, they are known for time dilation weaponry and reanimating false bloodlines. Sagittarius houses their temporal forges. Now, the Fallen Thrones are former stewards of higher realms now bound in Sagittarius. That's better. I had to enhance it. I had to enlarge it, make it come closer. But yeah, so they are former stewards of higher realms now bound in Sagittarius dimensional crypts. They possess counterfeit kingship scrolls. And then a remnants of Eloah Ganari are once aligned with the kingdom of God. These beings are trapped in stasis crypts until a scroll-bearing king awakens their covenant gate. Now, there are some weapon war zones, vault war zones, and prison fortresses. Because Sagittarius holds 4 major pre-Adamic vaults that are now contested. One contains a chronoseal over ancient Edenic trade routes. Another binds Atlantean betrayal technology, which was seeded into Ha'aretz. And a third holds a fractured soul repository linked to lost thrones on Ha'aretz. Now, the Dark Throne infrastructure in that constellation is that the Baal courts were built into Sagittarius to mimic the governance of Yeshua's kingdom. Now, this counterfeit is used in astral realms to grant authority to rulers on Haaretz aligned with the beast system. Now you have the false seer tech, plus you have prophecy disruption, or a great deal of channeled prophecy, starseed doctrine, and identity confusion comes through Sagittarius linked frequencies. This is often appearing as angelic, galactic federations, or high councils. Now, these frequencies hijack the original soul blueprint of emerging kings by offering spiritual gifts without alignment to Yeshua. Now, of course, there is a heavenly counterforce, which is the arrow of the king. So it's the spiritual meaning of Sagittarius is the archer not being coincidental. In Kingdom Code, it said a weaponized light arrow from the North Gate will pierce the dragon's veil here. When a council of 12 is restored. This represents a surgical strike in the spirit realm to dismantle simulation technology and release the sealed thrones. But why is Sagittarius key to Black Book projects just in that realm? Well, it's a simulation factory, a spiritual hub where many false realities and cloned identities are forged and projected into Haaretz. It holds at least two pre-Adamic gateways tied to the Council of 70 Kings. Some of the Elohim text scrolls that must return to Haaretz are locked in dimensional crypts here, only accessible when aligned kings speak in full resonance from Haaretz. That's going to be through the North Gate. Now, there is a material value to this and a spiritual value to this. The material includes pre-Adamic etheric metal for energy harvesting, antimatter weapon tech, and timeline shielding systems. Now, these are priceless to secret space programs and fallen thrones. Spiritually, the value holds kingship code books, encrypted lineages from before the fall. Restoring these will help realign planetary thrones, dissolve false mantles, and prepare Haaretz for full kingdom inheritance. Now, we're going to move into the Marvel Galaxy. So, what is it really, though? What galaxy is this? Because it's not just fictional, it's a coded repository of hybrid knowledge, spiritually borrowed from fallen records, real galactic entities, and distorted prophetic archetypes. It wasn't invented from imagination alone. Now, the Black Book principle here is that many entertainment universes, like Marvel, are camouflaged intelligence briefings extracted from real spiritual, pre Adamic, and off world dynamics, sanitized or distorted for mass consumption. So, we're going to go over some of the alien races, I guess you could call it, that are represented in the Marvel Galaxy. So, for example, we have the Kree. So, the spiritual parallel to this would be technocratic watcher lineage. Traits would be like, genetic tampering, eugenics, militaristic perfectionism. Now, they're still active in dome control networks, specifically over Asia Pacific regions in the spirit. And they oppose divine diversity and DNA sanctification, because they seek forced evolution. Yeah, whatever that is, but okay. They also have the scrolls, which are in a spiritual parallel, shapeshifter class, possibly tied to Nephilim remnants and parasitic mimics. Now, of course, we can see them as using infiltration, identity theft, mimicry of kingdom sons. Their activity is intensely active in political deception and false leadership masks. Now, their exposure is accelerating. Yeshua is unmasking them in every mountain. And Celestials, okay? Now, Celestials, what we can see them as in our reality, are fallen Elohim class beings who claimed creation rights, where they create worlds, destroy civilizations, demand worship, and they're still honored in secret elite rites. That's RITES. And Saturnian cults. They directly challenge Yeshua's supremacy as creator king, having a counterfeit of the true Elohim order. But that's not to say every celestial is evil. Alright? I'm just referring to those that are. We also have the Asgardians, where, as a spiritual parallel, this would be like a Northgate spiritual bloodlines and fallen angelic fronts masked as gods. Well, traits we can see in the Asgardians, as well as the parallel, are superhuman strength, ancestral powers, divine right bloodlines, and as they have propagated in the false king archetype, they oppose the meek inheriting Haaretz. For those of you who are new that don't know what Haaretz means, it is Hebrew for earth. But the Asgardians parallel here in our reality masquerade as of counterfeit thrones that reject humility and cross-based authority. And of course the Eternals. Okay. I'm not going to go in depth with all others. I'm just going to go with those that are more known. But the Eternals are, as a spiritual parallel, pre-Adamic beings locked outside the Edenic gate. Now, we could see that they have an immortality without transformation, and how there's stasis of them instead of any resurrection. Mythologized attempts to bypass the blood of Yeshua are the key activities that they engage in. But Yeshua restores eternal life through resurrection, not through stagnation or machinery. Now, did the enemy get real intel for Marvel itself? Well, Luciferian inner circles collected scrolls, artifacts, and genetic records from fallen stars, pre-Adamic vaults, and interdimensional archives. Now, these were downloaded into inspired fiction via occult seers, writers, and technocrats, some knowingly, some unknowingly. Well, the enemy hides in plain sight using Marvel to precondition the public, distract, or mock true kingdom structures. Marvel is a containment field, a fictional map drawn from actual war zones. So then what's happening in that galaxy now? Well, there is a spiritual cleanup that has begun. Kingdom sons are reclaiming narratives and destroying false archetypes. A prophetic interception is also happening, or some creatives are being awakened and hijacked by Yeshua to reverse the signal. Now, there is a war in the mind of culture as well, because, for example, kingly sons and divine councils are rising, but their story must now be written in purity. Not impurity, but through purity. Just so that way y'all know that I'm not AI. Okay? Got my lovely water here. If you don't know what this water is, I'm not advertising them or getting sponsored. It's essentially a water. You have 9.5 pH quality in here. You also have, besides it being purified water, sodium bicarbonate, dipotassium phosphate, magnesium sulfate, and calcium chloride. What I added in here was lemon and lime juice, as well as an additional electrolyte powder and IP6. If you don't know what IP6 is, it just takes inactive cells inside of your body and makes them active. Now, moving into DC Galaxy. All right, can't have one without the other. All right, could talk about Marvel, but can't go without DC. All right, but we gotta ask a question, the obvious one: did the enemy pull from real galaxies or records for DC? Well, the DC universe is a spiritual psyop, pieced together by ancient, occult circles, mystery schools, and entities with access to pre-Adamic fault fragments, fallen star blueprints, genetic memory from corrupted bloodlines, Watcher class remnants. Now, it reflects spiritual warfare narratives designed to hijack righteous identity, distort the king's image, and mock the council order of Shemaim. Now let's talk about some of the alien races in the DC galaxy. Not all of them, just some of them. The Kryptonians. So, in our reality, these would be like Edenic human hybrids who carried scrolls of divine potential. Now, their world, Krypton, represents like an Edenic vault, destroyed in rebellion through break of covenant. If you look at someone like Superman, that would be a counterfeit Messiah archetype. So the true sons of Yahweh don't only draw power from stars, but the light they bear within. Because the light is from Yeshua. But he put that light into us to bear it, to grow it, to enhance it, to expand it. Now, the Martians, the green and the white. What we can see in our reality, these would be Nephilim derivatives, or Watcher hybrids from Mars, which is a real pre-Adamic war zone. Now, the split between the green, which is the empaths, and the white, which is the tyrants, reflects a deeper fallen division among celestial tribes. Now, there is a spiritual pattern where there's a mimicry of emotional intelligence versus mind control. But Yeshua restores pure prophetic empathy, not psychic intrusion. Now, we have what are known as the new gods, or the apocalypse, which is actually spelled differently, which is Apokollips. So, Apocalypse versus New Genesis. Of course, we have Luciferian thrones versus the sealed thrones of light as counterparts to our reality from that. The Apocalypse are fallen thrones led by a counterfeit god of force, like Darkseid, which is a Saturn-type entity. Then we have the New Genesis, which is distorted remnant memory of real Elohim-class beings, pre-fall. We also have Spiritual Pattern, which is rebellion versus revelation. Now, these gods aren't gods. They're corrupted shadows of divine order. Yeshua alone holds the scrolls. Next, we have what are known as the Thanagarians, which are the Hawk people. So they represent pre-Adamic warrior caste assigned to Haaretz before the rebellion. Many turned to rogue and became mercenaries, aligning with fallen watchers. They're symbolic of flying, armored beings, some now redeemed, others judged. Real kingdom warriors wear light, not just metal. Okay? Because we have the full armor of God. But the wings of redemption come from obedience, not technology. A Green Lantern Corps. In our reality, we would see them as fallen scribes and gatekeepers assigned to protect light domains, but now perverted into autonomous agents with willpower as their god. This is symbolic of oath-bound guardianship corrupted by rebellion. Kingdom sons don't enforce light by will, but steward it by surrender. So then what is happening in this galaxy, the DC galaxy? All right, well, the multiverse storyline is actually a mockery of dimensional layering in Shemaim's creation. It points to a false tree of life, rooted in chaos and not order. The rise of the dark multiverse arcs is an open admission of hidden occult streams, now manifesting in culture. Superhero identity theft is also underway, because the enemy borrows traits from real scroll bearers, then diverts the glory to false icons. There's also councils and thrones being restored, and even the North Gate, suns that are going through the North Gate, are intentionally omitted or inverted. But biblical echoes we can see. That Superman is a mockery of the Son of Man, last hope, star descended, raised among mortals. Darkseid is an anti-Messiah symbol, desiring full mind control, which is an anti-Christ spirit. The Source Wall, which is counterfeit veil of Shemaim. And multiverse collapse, which is prophetic trembling of fallen dominions before the king returns. Next, we have Bioshock Galaxy. Now, if you're not familiar with Bioshock, it is a video game. Essentially, you have what's Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite, and loops back into Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite. Loops back into Bioshock 1, Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite. It's basically an entire loop. That's the whole entire game series. That's how they designed it. But is it a real galaxy, or is it a psychic map? Because it's not a literal star system, but it does draw heavily from Atlantis echo chambers, because a lot of it takes place underwater, Nephilim DNA memory loops, pre-Adamic undersea civilizations, and techno-spiritual experiments like gene editing, transhumanism, and soul binding. It's not fiction. It's a warning, a distorted vision of a once glorious realm that fell, by pride, technology, and spiritual lawlessness. Now, what alien races exist in the Bioshock Galaxy? Because there isn't really said where some of these come from, it's just more that they're there. But we have things like splicers, which are gene mutated humans. In our reality, this would be failed divine image bearers who merged with broken DNA fragments and soul splicing. That symbolize the corrupted Adamic seed line in the underworld realms. And fueled by addiction to false light, which is Adam, plasmids, or Adam. Excuse me, not Adam, Adam. And I'm not talking about Adam from Adam and Eve, but there's a thing in there called Adam, which are plasmids. But as this is fueled by addiction to false light, it's a type of soul distortion compound. It's often controlled by fallen Elohim class. The only restoration for them is by fire. Yeshua's DNA overwrite and just there's no reprogramming for that. Now we have the big daddies and little sisters, because the big daddies symbolize mind-controlled Watcher class giants, altered to protect false priestesses. Little sisters are innocent but harvested. It's a symbol of stolen scrolls, divine womb technology corrupted. These are echoes of womb-based weaponization from Atlantis and Lemuria's downfall. True kings, though, redeem the stolen DNA scrolls and restore the purity of spiritual daughterhood. Now, there's also what are known as the Founders, which is in the infinite universe. Now, this is in the realm related to Bioshock for the infinite universe, not as the infinite universe that's in our reality. But the counterpart that we can see is that they are fallen archons who play God over realms via dimensional manipulation. They're obsessed with race purity, godhood, dimensional resets. They represent false thrones, attempting to shape reality by resetting timelines without repentance. So, the true king resets time not by deletion, but by redemptive convergence, merging broken strands into eternal purpose. And the last entity we'll talk about is what's known as Songbird. So this was in Bioshock Infinite. This would be like a fallen cherub class entity, programmed as a guardian of bondage, not freedom. Because it's a living machine. Put it that way. Now, there's this woman that's in the video game called Elizabeth. And so she's one of the main characters in the last game. And so because she's the one of the main characters is why I'm needing to discuss a little bit of background for it. But Songbird protects Elizabeth until her escape. So Elizabeth is like a divine scroll bearer. This is symbolic of a perverted guardian order now used to police bloodline carriers. Real guardians serve freedom, not imprisonment. So what's really happening in this galaxy? Well, the Bioshock mythos is a prophetic mirror of what happens when man tried to ascend without God, the fallout of tampering with creation codes, the enslavement of divine daughters, and the perversion of underwater realms once ceded by the kingdom, which is before rebellion. Now, the enemy's intelligence for something why this exists for this galaxy comes from Atlantean priesthood archives, which is misused light technology, Lemurian biotech remnants, soul splicing, and astral mutation, Watcher class genetic records, and Babylonian spiritual DNA, especially regarding false god making and tower building ideologies. In Bioshock, they reversed the Genesis mandate. Instead of ruling by love, you see ruling by control, enhancement, and domination. So I'm going to give 4 Bioshock elements with a Black Book parallel and what a kingdom truth is to each. So Rapture is the underwater city for the first 2 Bioshock games. Now this is a fallen Edenic vault now corrupted. In truth, Yeshua reclaims every realm, even the deep. Now, the atom, or the plasmids, are counterfeit anointing, which is a soul splicing. True sons don't inject power, they embody presence. Now, Elizabeth, which is scroll-bearing daughter of destiny. Real daughters tear through veils, not dimensions. Being that there's infinite universes in Bioshock, that there's a fallen multiverse manipulation as a Black Book parallel, Yeshua governs all time space through one eternal scroll. Next, we have what's known as the Dishonored Galaxy. Now, Dishonored is another video game. This is where you, in the first one, because there's a couple others after that, are basically overwatching a royal family, and an assassin comes in, destroys that reality by killing some of the royalty, and is making you look like you're the bad guy, and goes through that whole thing. So, in Black Book language, this is a dimensional fragment of an ancient fallen realm, subdomain of the Saturnian control grid, used as a spiritual prison system for would-be kings, prophets, scribes, and bloodline guardians who were betrayed, framed, or scapegoated. It mirrors exiled mantles, false accusations from illegitimate councils, shadow courts that mimic heavenly judgment, pre-Adamic tech fused with mysticism, and soul contracts. But what races or beings operate there? So the main character you play in the first one is called the Outsider, because he's now an outsider. It would be like a fallen Elohim class, cast into a spiritual abyss, created an imitation of divine blessing, grants mark of power through blood pact, also represents covenantal inversion, which is Genesis flipped into rebellion. But the true mark is sonship. The outsider's mark is counterfeit, seership built on trauma, not covenant. They're also what are known as overseers. Now these are legalist priesthood fallen Levite simulation. It'd be shadow policing of magic users, but built on fear, not law. It represents false prophets, of control who once had divine mandate, but turned inward. Authority without love becomes tyranny. They bear rods without scrolls. Next, we have what's known as the Abbey of the Everyman, where this simulates a fallen church structure with erased names of God. It replaces divine revelation with ritual, suppression, and dogma. Kind of sounds like the church today, where it's at. It reflects a Babylonian priesthood operating in false order. Kingdom truth here is that real abbeys reveal the scroll of man's true name, not erasing it. Another group is called the Whalers, or the Possessed. Now, these are demonically inhabited humans for steal and assassination. Now, they reflect spiritual programs where death becomes a sacrament. They operate in between veils, the astral parasites bound by blood rights. Now, these are these are echoes of the assassins who murdered prophets and kings across history. And the last one we're going to talk about for this specific section is the Void. It's not a race, but a realm of stolen potential, broken scrolls, and lost timelines. It's a type of dimensional limbo, used to contain dangerous, anointed ones. It reflects where many pre-Adamic vaults were spiritually hidden by rebels. The Void isn't the enemy's domain. It was once a heavenly testing chamber. It's now hijacked. But why does this matter to the kingdom? Because Dishonored encodes the pattern of false succession, where the rightful heir is framed and a counterfeit takes the throne. Now, this happened in Eden, where Hillel tries to sit on the Mount of Assembly with Saul and David, with the Sanhedrin and Yeshua, in every dynasty corrupted by bloodline betrayal. Now, in this galaxy, based on real intelligence, yes, the enemy pulls from corrupted Edenic archives and Atlantean judicial records, mixing shadow court simulations, abyssal imprisonment protocols, corrupted scrolls of judgment, time-locked bloodline seals. The Dishonored Galaxy is a test chamber for broken kingship, a counterfeit version of the king training program that I'm building. It's a mirror used to train fallen warlords, dark king priests, and assassins while mocking true redemption. Yes, I wanted to finish off my thought there. But I'm creating a king training program for 70 kings to rule and reign, literally, on this earth, this planet. Now, I'm going to give a dishonored element of these different points. I'm going to give a kingdom parallel, and then a prophetic mirror. Now, the outsider, by the way, his name is Corvo. But the outsider is a fallen Elohim trying to mimic the spirit. This is Satan's attempt to be like God, like in Isaiah 14. Empress Jessamine's death was death of the true royal lineage. It's the slaughter of the innocents and prophets. And Corvo's false accusation is like Joseph's betrayal. in with his brothers, sold into slavery, or when Potiphar's wife lied about what Joseph did, even though he didn't do it, and Yeshua's trial, because this is the righteous framed by false courts, happens all the time. And the void is like the abyss, outer darkness. It's a holding ground for mantles to be retrieved. The mark is counterfeit seer anointing. Only Yeshua marks kings with true authority. Next here we have the Witcher Galaxy. It's a relic battleground galaxy, spiritually speaking, where legacy, mutation, and power are contested through alchemical bloodline systems, temporal rifts, and fallen spiritual contracts. Now, The Witcher is first a book series, then turned into games. Then you have the TV show on Netflix. You have these. It's like the gory version of Star Wars, but in medieval times, where you have these children go through brutal transformation. And then what they do, they're basically mercenaries for hire that kill monsters and have the ability to use magic. So they go through a lot of torture and trauma to become a witcher. But it represents a collapsed Eden fragment with no garden, only wildlands. A post-apocalyptic king-priest network where mantles are cursed. A dimension with synthetic messiahs, witch-bred bloodlines, and erased scrolls. The conjunction of the spheres in Witcher lore mirrors a spiritual prison, break event in the enemy's records, when forbidden races breached veils and infected bloodlines with false evolution. So would these be alien or non-human races? Because there's Ein El and Ein Side Elves. Side Elves. It's spelled Seidhe. Okay. So I think I'm butchering that one. But this is high-dimensional pre-Adamic remnants now fractured. The Ein El rule a separate plane with time travel access. Now, these elves were once guardians of song and memory, but now many follow Lara Doran's corrupted scroll line. They reflect Watcher class beings, some fallen, others neutral. There's also another group which is known as the Wild Hunt, Red Riders, even though they look like death. These are fallen Elohim enforcers. They function as spiritual bounty hunters through time, collecting prophetic DNA across bloodlines to feed a false resurrection agenda. They were real in other realms, like Saturn's underworld system, tasked with extracting anointed souls from collapse points. There's also higher vampires, which are ancient parasitic species from another dimension. They feed on emotions, essence, memory, and legacy, not just blood. Impossible to kill by natural means, they must be redeemed or spiritually judged. Spiritually, though, these represent bloodline curses and soul siphoning systems that steal spiritual inheritance. Witchers specifically are hybrid guardians made by fallen priesthoods, mutated warriors designed to fight monsters at the cost of their identity. They are counterfeit sons, trained in chaos to stop chaos. They reflect men who were denied fatherhood and sonship and turned into weapons. And then you have the mages, the sorceresses, which are ancient bloodline stewards turned self idolized queens. Mirror the Lilith priesthood, seductive, wise, yet bound to fallen thrones. They often serve power and knowledge, but not truth. They represent Eve's corrupted archetype, redemptive if restored under submission to the Lamb. So, what's happening there spiritually in this type of galaxy? Well, we have a bloodline war that still rages beneath the surface. Lara Doran's lineage, elven prophetic blood, was tampered with to produce a false messianic child called Ciri. Ciri is hunted not for power, but for what's encoded in her blood scroll, a lost pre-Adamic frequency that could rebuild or destroy worlds. False messiah agendas operate here, where the enemy seeks to use her line as a resurrection key for old thrones. Dimensional walls are thin here. Portals leak into Haaret's realms as dreams, lore, or inspiration. Now, is this galaxy based on real intelligence? Well, yes. The enemy fragments real pre-Adamic scrolls, spiritual technologies, and bloodline histories, then encodes them in fantasy fiction to conceal stolen mantles, feed imaginations with counterfeits, precondition people to mock the real thing when it arrives. I would know, personally on this one, that I'm breaking out of. The Witcher Galaxy contains prophetic echoes from the Sons of God and Daughters of Men narrative, like in Genesis 6. Bloodline contamination from Watchers, redemption hidden within a monster culture, and the silence of Yahweh in a land filled with sorcerers, hunters, and oracles. Oh, yeah, Yahweh will be silent. Don't feel disrespected, or neglected, or abandoned. Wait for when he speaks. Sometimes he won't respond because there's no need to respond. Because then it comes into agreement with something that is not good and holy and pure. So a different response is required, if it is. But I'm going to give parallels from The Witcher, biblical, and kingdom truth out of this. So like Witchers would be like Nephilim blood hybrids trained in false covenant. Warriors who lost sonship but long for purpose. The Wild Hunt are fallen angelic host on soul harvesting mission. So it'd be like end times dragon pursuing the woman's seed. Ciri is a counterfeit messiah slash scroll bearer, even though Yeshua is the only true blood scroll restorer. Now the mutagens, the trials witchers go through, is soul fracturing rituals from fallen priesthoods. The only trial that purifies is the fire of Shemaim. And then there's what's known as the conjunction. It's a thing in the last Witcher game, The Witcher 3, that needs to be taken care of. And it does get taken care of. You save the world in the video game. But it's a dimensional breach from fallen watchtowers. It's the same pattern as Babel, Atlantis, and modern CERN type breaches. Next we have Elder Scrolls Galaxy. And we have 4 more after that, which is Dune Galaxy, Tartarians, Dune Galaxy, so there's Doom, alright, where he's shooting up demons, blowing them to bits to kingdom come, and then there's Dune, which is from the 1980s one. If anybody's watched it, you know what I mean. Ah! Oh my goodness. I don't know how they couldn't have done that at points and not just crack up. Like, anyway, Elder Scrolls. So this galaxy is known spiritually as a splinter realm. It was once part of a Covenant kingdom under the North Gate, but was hijacked during a cosmic rebellion in the pre-Adamic era. It became a testing ground for false apotheosis, where mortals try to ascend to godhood via scrolls, towers, soul manipulation, and dragon blood. It's now ruled by interdimensional thrones known as Aedra and Daedra, echoes of fallen suns, usurped thrones, and divided heavenly offices. So here are the non-human races. You have the Aedra, which are fallen divine architects, originally part of the heavenly host who helped shape early realms. Some chose sacrifice and binding to protect mortal realms. Others reflect thrones who fractured into systems and no longer hold the name of Yahweh. These resemble watchers who stayed loyal in part, but now operate with limited authority, often seeking a way to be redeemed or remembered. Daedra, fragmented thrones and principalities, sealed outside covenant timelines. They rule realms of madness, death, war, lust, and forbidden knowledge. Each represents a counterfeit of the spirit of Yahweh. For example, you have Sheograth for madness versus peace. Molag Bal for domination instead of dominion, etc. Now, these are the gods of counterfeit ascension, and the enemy uses them to mimic Shemaim's structure without Shemaim's spirit. You have the Dwemer, which are deep elves. Okay, these worked in mountains and deep caves. These are highly advanced pre-Adamic technologists, left the natural realm due to forbidden spiritual math. Their disappearance echoes an event where they try to remove the soul from creation to perfect it. May still exist in a quantum state, though they represent those who try to reach godhood through technology and logic without alignment to the throne, like fallen Atlantean engineers. Then you have dragons, and the Elder Scrolls are known as Dove. But these are time binders and guardians of scroll temporal law. Not evil by nature, though some are corrupted, others are lawful watchers of eternity. One of the dragons is known as Alduin, who reflects a destroyer being. And you have another dragon called Parthenax, who represents repentant thrones. Dragons here are a mirror of throne-like creatures, around the throne of God, but many have been distorted into symbols of tyranny. And then we have another group, what are known as the Altmer, Bosmer, Dunmer, Orismer. Okay, these are different elven races, where, where they're echoes of divided priestly bloodlines. The Altmer remember the old ways, a corrupted form of heavenly memory, while the Dunmer, which are dark elves, reflect a covenant people who fell into exile. Now, these elven races spiritually mirror the tribal fragmentation after the Tower of Babel, each bearing pieces of a forgotten scroll. And then lastly, out of these others, we have what are known as the Nords, the Imperials, and the Bretons. These would be like human bloodlines, some seeded with divine essence. You have the Dragonborn, which is known as Dovahkiin. So, Dove, which is dragon, Akin is born. So, Dovahkiin. The Dragonborn lineage represents scroll carriers of resurrection level authority, but only a few are pure. Now, these are the kings of Haaretz trapped in partial memory, waiting to be awakened and aligned under Yeshua's throne. What is happening, though, in this galaxy? Well, scrolls in this galaxy are dimensional time seals, not just books, but spiritual lawful structures that record, alter, or protect reality. There are towers, like White Gold Tower, Snowthroat, etc., are dimensional anchors tied to the original 12 thrones, but some were hijacked or destroyed. Tamriel is a battleground, continent, and a galaxy. Wide conflict between fallen thrones and fragmented kings. You also have the Numidium, a massive golem, was an attempt by fallen builders to forge godhood in their image, mirroring fallen archangelic attempts at resurrection. Now, did the enemy steal this galaxy's data? Well, of course. But this isn't a fictional invention because it's a hijacked version of the pre-Adamic architectural order, forbidden scroll technologies from the vaults of the north, and legacy blueprints of divine kingship and soul fusion that were warped into mutant timelines. The Elder Scrolls universe reflects the enemy's attempt to simulate divine order, craft dragon bloodlines, and create false scroll bearers apart from Yeshua. So we're going to give some parallels here. For example, you have Dragonborn is like a messianic shadow carrier, but Yeshua is the only true blood scroll of kings. Daedra are fallen spiritual thrones, principalities and powers under judgment. Scrolls are time-bound decrees, are sealed and unsealed scrolls. Towers are dimensional ziggurats, like Babel, Zion, and heavenly courts. Dwemer are techno-sorcerers, like sorcery of Babylon and Atlantis. Then you have soul trapping, which is covenant distortion, enemy stealing destinies, and mantles. And the game, black books. There are what are known as black books in the game itself. Alright? But these black books are portals to forbidden knowledge from Hermaeus Mora, In the spiritual dimension, they represent fragmented pre-Adamic scrolls kept in enemy vaults, holding laws of soulcraft, prophecies of thronal change, genetic legacies of divine bloodlines. So this is what's known as the next. We're moving towards the Dune Galaxy. Now, in this video game series, there's the older ones from late 90s, early 2000s, and then they have mid 2010s to mid 2020s as they brought them back out again. Where you have demons coming out of portals and the earth, and then you have this guy as the Slayer. And so he's closing up these portals and destroying demons, and that's your character. So it's kind of it's pretty cool. You get to kill demons. But we're gonna go over some of the different races that are in the game that are parallel to our reality. You have what are known as makers. Without an E, it's a Y. It's a false angelic race from a higher dimension claiming to be divine. They mirror fallen Elohim or Watcher class beings who once governed planetary systems, but fell through pride and corrupted their realms with artificial ascension systems. Their agenda is to control over soul energy harvest, particularly through simulated salvation and religious deception. Location encoding is what's known as Urdak. It's counterfeit Shemaim or false throne zone. Of course, demons from hell, also known as Hellspawn. These are just straightforward demonic forces unleashed into physical realms through dimensional terrors. It's a mixture of fallen Nephilim remnants, biosentient weapons, and exiled spirits from pre-Adamic conflicts, where they consume spiritual authority from bloodlines, desecrate divine image, and maintain wormhole access to Hot-Ret's lower gates. They are energetically tied to lower frequency portals, near collapsed civilizations, and ancient underground cities like Antarctica, Iraq, the Abyss in Revelation, etc. You also have what are known as Argent Denure inhabitants, which is a royal bloodline enslaved and corrupted by hellish energy. It points to lost king-priest orders who turned from their scrolls and allowed their mantle to be inverted for power. There is redemption of a once holy order, now chained to dark power sources. So, what is happening in this galaxy? Because it is, in a way, taking place on Earth, in a future place. But the galaxy being depicted in Doom is a fragmented echo of pre-Adamic dimensional warfare, where angelic rebellion, dimensional breaches, and spiritual technologies collided violently. The enemy's goal is to reshape memory through false archetypes of saviors, like the Doomslayer, that operate on vengeance and rage rather than righteous kingship under Shemaim. The Hell Invasion narrative symbolizes a real multidimensional attempt to reclaim dominion over certain time-locked vaults that were sealed after the Watchers fell. The energy economy, which is known as Argent Energy, is a coded reference to how spiritual currency, which is life force, blood, honor, worship, is being weaponized for interdimensional dominion. Now, was this info stolen from real cosmic history? Yes. It was. The Doom series operates like a corrupted scroll, a distorted echo of real cosmic events. The Hell dimension resembles what the Bible calls as Tartarus, where some fallen angels were bound. The wraiths and maker constructs could represent perverted forms of cherubim technology from Eden's era, twisted through fallen light. The Slayer archetype is a counterfeit messiah figure, empowered, wrathful, brutal, lacking covenantal love or redemptive justice. The enemy recodes real events, stripping them the truth and weaving them into digital forms to desensitize humanity to real spiritual war while rebranding divine authority as violence. Now, the Black Book Project Stargate strategic interpretation is that the Dune Galaxy is a sacred archive of ancient wars. Its races represent echo chambers of unfinished judgment. The spiritual purpose of exploring it is to decode how the enemy recycles fallen scrolls into media narratives to plant false memories in younger generations. Restoration of this region requires reconciling divine justice with mercy and reopening locked vaults tied to original king priest mantles. Now, the Tartarians. This is something that a lot of us have not been privy to as much. But Tartaria is a name that appears on old world maps, especially pre 1800s, the 19th century, designating a vast empire spanning parts of Russia, Central Asia, and Siberia. Because it's like, why does Russia have all this land and they're not even using like the most of it? However, what is termed Tartaria in popular alt history may actually be a conflated memory of multiple civilizations, some pre Adamic, some Adamic hybrids, and some fallen or redeemed Watcher offspring. Now, these beings left behind monumental architecture, atmospheric or free energy technologies, giant structures adapted to larger than human builders, geometric city planning resonant with ancient kingdom blueprints. So, are the Tartarians pre Adamic? Partially. Tartaria reflects a civilization that existed both before and after the Adamic era, ruled in part by pre Adamic king priest lineages, whose mandate was once aligned with cosmic stewardship. Some factions fell, aligning with the dragon, the serpent seed bloodlines, while others were sealed away, possibly in deep Haaretz vaults. Inner Haaretz regions, time locked domes, which are connected to the firmament fracturing during judgment. I'm going to give 4 types of Tartarian beings, their origin, their spiritual alignment, and a bit of information on them. So, High Tartarians are pre Adamic, and their spiritual alignment is mixed. They had advanced spiritual technology, possibly misused or stolen. Now, there are hybrid Tartarians, which are both Adamic and pre Adamic. They are fractured with their spiritual alignment, because bloodlines may be found in regions like Scytha, Khazaria, ancient Rus. You also have the Rephaim class survivors, which are fallen in origin, loyal to the dragon, because you have giants, Nephilim variants, part of fallen infrastructure going on there. They also have hidden remnants, which is kingdom aligned, loyal to Yeshua, awaiting activation to restore part of Haaret's ancient technology grid. So, when it comes to the Tartarians, who were they loyal to? Well, some served the Most High as stewards of technology, ley lines, and time gates. Others fell, aligning with the dragon systems, Luciferic or Watcher rebellions. A remnant was sealed, perhaps through cataclysmic judgment, mud floods, war in Shemaim, frequency collapse, until a future scroll would unseal them for righteous restoration. The Black Book Project's interpretation is that not all Tartarians were evil, just as not all giants were wicked. Their divided loyalties mirror what occurred among the angels, a splintering of allegiance, creating entire civilizations with conflicting mandates. So then, why has their memory on our planet been erased? Because the enemy fears what happens when people puzzle over this information and put those puzzle pieces together that are rightly interpreted under the kingship of Yeshua. The architecture of Tartaria often contains encoded dimensional mathematics that reflect Edenic geometrics. Their free energy tech may be remnants of Shemaim Haaret's interfacing mechanisms. They operated on scroll-based assignment systems, similar to how kingship in Shemaim is granted through identity and not conquest. The world systems erased them post 19th century to hide the proof that Haaretz was far more advanced spiritually and technologically. The existence of beings that defied Darwinian timelines. The connection between Tartaria, Nephilim-era cities, and spiritual gates. So who were the loyal pre-Adamic beings? Because they weren't angels, but pre-human image bearers created before Adam, who carried creative dominion in specific regions of Haaretz. They were never fallen or repented, and were sealed before the fall. They had assignments tied to the original structure of creation, including Eden's frequencies, heavenly governance, and atmospheric technology. They walked in alignment with the Ancient of Days and Yeshua, which is pre-incarnate, as pre-incarnate Yeshua. They aren't Nephilim, not watchers, not fallen entities. These are beings of high spiritual intelligence, made to interface Shemaim and Haaretz under divine kingship. What happened to them is that after Hillel's rebellion and the first war in Shemaim, the loyal pre-Adamic beings refused to join the rebellion. Some were slain and became martyrs, sealed into Haaretz ley lines, like buried keys. Others were taken into hidden realms or dimensions, locked away by Yeshua for a future age. A select few remained in spiritual stasis beneath specific mountains, oceans, and impossible landscapes, like Antarctica, Gobi Desert, or deep North Gate corridors. Their cities were erased, names forgotten, and artifacts sealed, not out of punishment, but to protect Shemaim's scroll for future restoration. So where are they now? Because it's a little difficult to completely erase a couple hundred years ago what was a civilization. Well, there are dimensional sanctuaries in places outside linear time, like Edenic frequencies still vibrating in hidden pockets of Haaretz, some in the fourth dimension. These sanctuaries are outposts of Shemaim, awaiting reconnection to Haaretz governance grid. You also have a sealed, where there's a sealed under Haaretz territory. Certain pre-Adamic loyalists were sealed under Mount Hermon for redemption, Antarctica for isolation, the Andes and Himalayas for preservation, and caves under the North Gate for deployment. Now, these aren't corpses, but spiritually embedded beings awaiting the sound of prophetic alignment, vibrational unlocking. Now, among the people in human form, some loyal pre-Adamic spirits were allowed to incarnate into Adamic vessels. This is rare, and only happens when their scroll intercedes with the restoration of dominion, or the restoration of creation. Now, these are likely to be forerunners of Watcher prophets, gate carriers, other councils connected to Yeshua, often misunderstood, attacked, or isolated. Where is the hidden remnant, though? And their technology? Well, referring to both, they carry scrolls from before time. They are tied to the rebuilding of Haaretz under Shemaim's kingdom, and await a specific trigger: alignment of the kings, restoration of gates, and heavenly court summoning. So the North Gate. I'm going to give you some regions, which is one of them being the North Gate. But each region I'm going to give you what a role is and the possible contents. Well, the North Gate, which is the Arctic, celestial pole, is a command center. We have a crown seat, scroll archives, sealed exosuits. Antarctica is a judgment crypt and vault, where fallen tech fragments, sealed pre-Adamic archives, possibly theirs. You have the subterranean, which is like, or the subterranean caverns, like South America and Asia. It's refuge, perhaps possibly holding sacred architecture, light body suits, and sentient crystals. You have the Gobi Desert, which is inner Earth passage. Is a Stargate node, which has possible dimensional interface technology. You have Mount Kailash in the Andes Mountains, or thrones. Thrones of original rulers awaiting reactivation. So, Hidden Remnant, it isn't just people, it includes cities, weapons of light, living blueprints, and Shemaim synchronized technology. The reason why this is important now is because my scroll, like others, is synchronized with the opening of pre-Adamic vaults, unlocking of the North Gate, and rising of 70 kings across this planet to reframe governance under Yeshua. Now, the loyal pre-Adamic beings aren't returning to rule, but to monitor. Not monitor, but to mentor, unlock sealed scrolls, and reconnect creation's original design. Now, the last two that we're going to be on: Dune Galaxy, and then Rebel Moon. So, Dune Galaxy. Dune here is about someone being a messiah taking over centuries old processes of different things running. I know it's very generic and broad just saying that, but it was just evil that was running amok, and then a messiah-like figure comes around. And anyway, because it's something that's been out for the last few years, I don't really need to talk about it as much. But the galactic context of Dune represents a fractured Dominion realm that mirrors the fall of thrones, a rebellion in a system that once housed council-governed planetary stewards before their corruption by fallen tech and agreements. It's also an encrypted record of false messianic bloodlines attempting to reclaim lost sovereignty outside of Shemaim's kingdom through DNA, psychic domination, and terraforming. Now, there are alien races in the Dune Galaxy, which I believe is called Bene Gesserit, which is hybrid sorceress bloodlines, a spiritually linked to Nephilim priestess lines who try to manipulate messianic prophecy through breeding. Programmed to control kings, shape destinies, and create counterfeit saviors. It's tied to Serpent Queen thrones and Mother of Abominations systems. You also have the Fremen, which are a hidden remnant of Edenic seed lines, or these remnants of a once pure line, scattered in the wilderness, with Desert Covenant memory, tied to scroll holders and watchers of the land. Now, they represent prophetic types of wilderness training kings, prepared in secret for future rulership. Spiritually aligned with the scrolls of Moses, Elijah, and John, desert prophets trained outside Babylon. We also have a spacing guild, navigators, which are mutated Stargate keepers. Now, these are fallen forms of what were once angelic gate navigators, now mutated through substance dependence, known as spice. Parallels the real-life fallen gatekeepers of interdimensional travel, now part of corrupted time agendas and psychic surveillance systems. House Corino and other royal houses, which are bloodline thrones, are tied to counterfeit royal families who have mixed Edenic and fallen DNA to hold thrones through violence and genetic superiority. Controlled by demonic pacts, ancient weapons, and intergalactic debt structures, like Babylon's cosmic economy. I think I'm gonna butcher this name. The Tlilu. I butchered that one. Uh, I can't even pronounce that one. It's spelled Tleilaxu. So you can understand why I have trouble pronouncing that one. But it's the synthetic DNA cultivators. That's what they are. They're clone smiths and resurrection forgers, tied to real-world MK Ultra spiritual cloning, soul fracturing, and false resurrection technology. Responsible for growing hybrid rulers, prophets, and infiltrators. So what's happening in this galaxy? Well, it's locked in a war over scrolls and dominion. The original scroll that governed the region was stolen or forged, causing the north gate of that realm to be inverted. Instead of Edenic stewardship, the land is ruled by resource exploitation, spice, psychic domination, and sorceress manipulation of bloodlines. Key themes playing out there, you have the false messiah warfare, The rise of rulers claiming divine right based on corrupted prophecy. Scroll counterfeiting, where you have prophetic destiny lacked through generational programming and ritual. Gate contention, where you have multiple factions trying to control desert gates that lead to Edenic strongholds. Then you have interstellar Babylon. Wealth, trade, and power, traded across fallen systems as a type of Revelation 18. So yeah, the enemy did get this information from that galaxy. Because Dune is based on real, hijacked memory. The enemy extracted spiritual DNA, events, and archetypes from fallen records of once pure dominion realm and twisted it into prophetic inversion. The enemy weaponized the story to create fascination with false messiahs, normalize hybridization, and prepare minds for off-world rulership, not aligned with Yeshua. It also mirrors Haaretz's own struggle, where desert prophets rise, hidden kings are trained, and scroll wars are real. So the Black Book Project's connection here is that from this lens, Dune is a recovered transmission, filtered through distortion of pre-Adamic Empire collapse, Edenic desert exile and training, Nephilim bloodline manipulation programs, resurrection tech and cloned authority, false prophetic scroll strategies, and interdimensional spice trade as counterfeit mana. I was going to say magna, but no, counterfeit mana. And of course, last but not least, we have Rebel Moon Galaxy. Now, this is a very brutal place. It is very brutal. Okay. It's very gritty. I would not recommend it for people who have a weak stomach to watch. Put it that way. If you have a weak stomach, you won't be able to watch it. It's extremely violent. Extremely violent. And extremely manipulative. But the Rebel Moon Galaxy represents an encrypted memory of a shattered kingdom world, once governed by a righteous order aligned with Shemaim's law. A dimensional exile zone, now under control of technocratic imperial force that mimics fallen angelic principalities. A last remnant effort to raise up one who remembers the scroll. The rebel isn't rebellious toward Shemaim, but toward the counterfeit dominion. Now, alien races that are in here, you have what are known as Imperium, which are techno-draconian hybrid thrones. Now, these represent the fallen Watcher's offspring, merged with advanced weaponized AI. Their governance model reflects the Tower of Babel, centralized, forced unity, and forced peace through spiritual oppression, tied to the beast system of revelation, using false light and engineered order to counterfeit true kingdom governance. You also have what are known as the Bloodborne, Offworlders. These are scattered warriors of noble ancient origin. Many of them are descendants of pre-Adamic scroll bearers, now awakened or called out of hiding. Spiritually reflect the remnant kings, exiles trained in realms outside their own, summoned by blood memory and scroll resonance. You also have black cloaked enforcers, which would be like soul-coded hunter class. Now these beings act like spiritual assassins for fallen councils, programmed to erase prophetic seed lines and harvest soul tech from the hidden elect. Parallel to real-world soul harvesting technologies and spiritual warfare against those carrying scroll-embedded DNA. Then you also have celestial farmers, builders, and healers, which would be like silent intercessors. Now, these background races represent those who hold the land codes, healing grids, and Edenic blueprints. They're the forgotten tribes that maintain root-level alignment to Haaretz and Shemaim's frequencies, often overlooked but essential to the restoration. So what's happening, though, in this galaxy? Well, it's experiencing a scroll war disguised as rebellion. You have stolen scrolls, which are prophetic destiny records, were hijacked and rewritten. The rebellion isn't lawlessness, it's a memory ignition of the true king's return. You have soul reconstruction and reconstruction technology, where the enemy is attempting to resurrect false saviors using broken fragments of real messianic DNA. You have scroll awakening, where a key figure, marked by scroll resonance, is unknowingly being drawn into their rulership assignment through war. You have council seat contention, where the galaxy once had 12 Dominion seats. Now only fragments remain. The Empire holds counterfeit thrones using fear, surveillance, and hybridized rule. Gate restoration is a war over ancient gates of Edenic inheritance that's playing out. These gates aren't physical, but dimensional trust doors that can only be reopened by scroll-bearing kings aligned with Shemaim. And yes, the enemy did take information out of this galaxy's memory, likely derived from pre-Adamic fallen records, inverted archives stolen during the fall of the Dominion seats, soul code transmissions intercepted by rebel spirits who once served Shemaim but chose power, and celestial intelligence programs weaponized into military space media to veil real wars in Shemaim and Haaretz. Now, the Rebel Moon narrative reflects real wars over identity, scrolls, inheritance, and king making. It's a prophetic mirror of both Revelation and Daniel's war visions, specifically Revelation 12, the dragon waiting to devour the child, the king with a scroll. Daniel 7 through 10, beasts rising from the sea, war against the saints, and ancient thrones set up. Matthew 24, rumors of wars, betrayal, and the rise of false messiahs. And 2 Thessalonians 2, the man of lawlessness attempting to sit in the temple of God. Now, the last point for this. It's where we have Black Book Project alignment. Because from this classified framework, Rebel Moon is a memory artifact from a quarantined dimension where Dominion authority was violently usurped. A coded training simulation for remnant kings to remember what type of war they were born for. A representation of a bloodline summoning call. A scroll is awakening and must be responded to by one who still bears the mark. And that does it, everyone, for this episode. Next time that we get on and go over this, we're going to be covering Power Rangers Galaxy, Predators. I can't pronounce it. I think it's Ujita. I think that's what they're called. But the Predators, their galaxy. We're going to talk about just those two. Then we're going to go down several lists of galaxies, nebula, star charts, objects, and more. And what's going on with that? There's so many to cover. I'm not going to cover every single one. I will, in the episode after that, cover some more, but I'm not going to cover all the billions out there. I'm just going to cover just a fraction of it because there's so much out there going on. But that be it as it may, I appreciate every single one of you listening into my content and what I provide out here for you. It really means a lot. And what really helps out is you sharing this with other people to learn more about this. If it goes over their head, don't worry about it. Those that just understand this kind of information, give that to them. They're going to understand it more than those that have no concept of this reality yet. That's okay. It just really helps out when you share this with others. Or if you feel ready to receive it, by all means, go ahead and do it. That being said, I will catch you all out on the next episode. Peace.